Tom and Dave walked in silence. The setting sun cast long shadows, stretching their figures into distorted giants. They had just left the old schoolhouse on the edge of town, a place shrouded in whispers and local legends. Tom kept glancing over his shoulder, a shiver crawling down his spine. He couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes boring into his back. "Do you think it followed us?" Tom finally choked out, his voice barely a whisper. Dave, trying to appear brave, shrugged. "Don't be silly," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He too felt the sudden chill in the air, the prickling sensation on the back of his neck. They picked up their pace, their sneakers kicking up dust on the deserted road. The houses were few and far between here, and the streetlights were either broken or stolen, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Tom's heart hammered against his ribs. He just wanted to be home, safe in his room, far away from the oppressive atmosphere of the abandoned schoolhouse and whatever lurked within its decaying walls. The unsettling feeling didn't leave Tom even when he was home. He couldn't shake off the image of the shadowy figure they'd glimpsed through the dusty window of the schoolhouse, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. He found it hard to sleep, tossing and turning in his bed, his dreams plagued by whispering voices and icy fingers trailing down his spine. His little sister, Lily, wasn't herself either. She, who was usually a playful whirlwind of laughter and energy, became quiet and withdrawn. Her once bright eyes were now clouded with fear, darting around as if she was constantly being watched. One evening, Tom found Lily talking to herself in her room. Her voice was different, high-pitched and chillingly cold. He crept closer to the door, his blood turning to ice as he heard the words she spoke. "They won't believe you," Lily said, her voice a grotesque parody of his little sister's. "They'll think you're crazy." Panic welled up in Tom's chest, choking him. He threw open the door and rushed to Lily's side. "Lily, what's wrong? Who are you talking to?" he asked, his voice shaky with fear. Lily turned to him, her eyes wide and vacant. A shiver ran down Tom's spine. It was like looking at a stranger wearing his sister's face. "She says I have to do it," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "She says it's the only way." Tom's eyes widened in horror as he noticed the deep, angry scratches on Lily's arm, fresh and bleeding. He knew then, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that whatever they had encountered at the schoolhouse had followed them home. And now, it had taken hold of his little sister. Desperation clawed at him. He had to do something, anything to save Lily. He thought of Dave, his voice trembling as he recalled their encounter. "It followed us, Dave, I know it did, and now it's got Lily." Dave was hesitant, his voice skeptical over the phone. He still clung to the hope that it had all been their imagination, a trick of the light and their own fear. But the urgency in Tom's voice, the raw terror that bled through his words, was impossible to ignore. Following Tom's frantic instructions, Dave arrived at the local library, his eyes scanning the shelves until they landed on Tom, his face pale and drawn. In his hands, he clutched a worn book, its pages filled with strange symbols and chilling illustrations. "I found something," Tom whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's about the schoolhouse, about the things that haunt it." The book spoke of restless spirits, of vengeful entities seeking solace or revenge. One name stood out, etched in bold letters: Father Nakamura, a man known for his knowledge of the supernatural, a beacon of hope for those tormented by unseen forces. Hope flickered in Tom's chest, a fragile flame in the encroaching darkness. They had a name, a path forward. Now they needed to convince Father Nakamura to help, to save Lily from the clutches of the entity that held her captive. Section 5. The Cleansing Ritual. Father Nakamura's house stood at the edge of town, a small, unassuming cottage surrounded by a garden overflowing with herbs and flowers. His eyes, though filled with age and wisdom, held a spark of something ancient, something powerful. He listened intently as Tom poured out his heart, his voice thick with fear and desperation. The old priest nodded slowly, his gaze filled with understanding. "It seems you have stumbled upon something dark and dangerous," he said, his voice low and soothing. "But do not despair, for there is always hope." That evening, under the pale glow of the moon, Father Nakamura stood in Lily's room, his presence commanding and calming. He moved with a practiced grace, his hands tracing ancient symbols in the air, his voice a low chant that seemed to vibrate within their very bones. The air crackled with energy, the shadows in the room twisting and writhing as if alive. Lily thrashed on the bed, her screams echoing in the stillness of the night. The scent of incense filled the air, a pungent, earthy aroma that seemed to push back the suffocating fear that had gripped the house. Section 6. The Ghost's Wrath. The entity resisted, its rage palpable. It manifested as a swirling vortex of shadows, its voice a guttural growl that seemed to claw at the edges of their sanity. The temperature in the room plummeted, a bone-chilling cold that seeped into their very marrow. "You cannot hide from me, little one," the entity hissed, its voice laced with malice. "You are mine now!" Lily screamed again, her small body racked with tremors. Tom wanted to rush to her side to shield her from the unseen terror, but Father Nakamura held him back with a firm hand. "Her spirit is caught between two worlds," he said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "We must help her find her way back." Father Nakamura continued his chant, his voice rising in power and intensity. The symbols he drew in the air glowed with an ethereal light, forming a protective barrier around Lily's bed. The entity raged and snarled, its shadowy form contorting in anger, but it was slowly being forced back, pushed away by the strength of the old priest's will. Section 7. A Sister's Savior. The struggle seemed to last an eternity, the air thick with tension and fear. But slowly, gradually, the entity's hold on Lily began to weaken. The shadows thinned, the air grew warmer, and the guttural growling faded into a mournful wail. Lily's screams subsided into whimpers, her eyes flickering open, confused and disoriented. The moment their eyes met, relief washed over Tom in a dizzying wave. It was her, his little sister, her gaze clear and frightened, but undoubtedly her own. "Tom?" Lily whispered, her voice hoarse. She looked around the room, her eyes widening as she registered the scene before her. What happened? Tom rushed to her side, gathering her in his arms, his heart overflowing with relief. "It's okay, Lily," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're safe now." Father Nakamura watched them, a small smile gracing his lips. The entity was gone, banished back to the darkness from whence it came. He could sense the lingering fear and exhaustion in the room, but also the overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude. Section 8. Whispers from the Beyond. As dawn painted the sky with hues of pink and orange, Father Nakamura made his preparations to leave. He stood by the door, his gaze heavy as he looked at Tom. "The spirit is gone," he said, his voice low, "but the veil between worlds is thin, especially for those who have been touched by darkness." He placed a reassuring hand on Tom's shoulder. "Lily will need your strength now more than ever. Protect her, Tom. Shield her from the shadows that may linger." He paused, his expression turning grave. "And whatever you do, never return to that schoolhouse. Some doors are best left unopened." Tom nodded, etching the priest's words onto his heart. He understood. The experience had changed them, branded them with the chilling touch of the supernatural. He would never be the same, but he would carry the weight of his encounter with a newfound courage, his heart filled with a fierce determination to protect his sister from the unseen dangers that lurked in the shadows. Section 9. A Promise Kept. Life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the memory of that night hung over them like a chilling spectre. Lily's nightmares gradually faded, replaced by dreams of sunshine and laughter. The scratches on her arm healed, leaving behind pale scars, a constant reminder of the darkness they had faced. Tom kept his promise to Father Nakamura, his vigilance unwavering. He became Lily's protector, her confidant, the keeper of her fragile peace. He learned to recognize the subtle signs, the fleeting shadows in her eyes, the tremor in her voice, and he would be there, a steady presence in her life, a shield against the unseen. They never spoke of the schoolhouse again. It remained a silent, looming presence on the edge of their town, a stark reminder of the darkness that lay hidden beneath the surface of their ordinary lives. Section 10. A Lesson Learned. Years later, when the memory had faded to a dull ache, Tom would sometimes find himself drawn back to the road leading to the abandoned schoolhouse. He would stand at a distance, the wind whispering through the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of a scream, a chilling reminder of the night his life had changed forever. He knew then that some wounds ran too deep to ever truly heal. Some encounters left an indelible mark on the soul, a haunting whisper that echoed through the corridors of time, but he also knew that fear, though powerful, could be overcome. He had faced the darkness and emerged, scarred but not broken. He had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the will to fight for what you loved, even in the face of the unknown. And in the quiet moments when the shadows grew long and the wind whispered secrets, he would hold his sister close, a silent promise passing between them, a promise to protect, to love, and to never let the darkness win.